have been thinking about for a number of years. I see a lot of people, and I would actually maybe throw myself in this category a little bit at the time, where they have an idea, maybe for a business, and they don't take that leap for a lot of reasons. But the main reason was they have a lot of anxiety, fear, doubts, self-limiting thoughts. And I really, especially in the United States, and we have, like I said, we have people from all over the world come to the U.S. for so many opportunities. What's different about the U.S. system is the U.S. system, our founding fathers, they understood this so well. They understood the fallen nature of man. And so what can we do is what they asked. What can we do? They looked at all the systems of government in the history of the world. And they decided it was every human being gravitates towards more power, right? So what can we do? Let's separate powers against themselves.
Checks and balances.
So we have checks and balances. So that's where you get the three branches of government, executive, judicial, legislative, but also it's why they designed a system of federal and state. And then within the state, you have local governments, right? And so these
Which is what I'm worried about El Salvador.
But, everybody should try if they have it in them, like an idea and a passion. Because look, at the end of the day, I always ask myself, what's the worst that can happen if this fails? I go back to doing what I was doing before. I go work for somebody else. I have skills. I have experiences.
It's just the way it is. And you need stomach for that. And that's why you have very smart people that work for entrepreneurs. And you have very smart people that are entrepreneurs. And sometimes you have not as smart people that are successful entrepreneurs, that they're just smart enough to hire smarter people than them that just don't have the stomach. Hola, soy Rodrigo Arenas. Te doy la bienvenida a Líderes, el podcast donde conversamos con las voces más influyentes en política y negocios, defendiendo siempre nuestros valores conservadores. Si quieres conocer de primera mano cómo piensan y qué inspira a los líderes de hoy, te invito a suscribirte al podcast. Apóyanos siguiéndonos en nuestras redes sociales y compartiendo nuestros episodios. Sé parte de la comunidad que construye un futuro mejor. Gracias por escucharnos en Líderes. Hola, bienvenidos a su nuevo episodio de su podcast Líderes con Rodrigo Arenas. Hoy tengo el gusto de estar con un buen amigo que me va a obligar a hacer este podcast en inglés, o sea que de una vez les pido que me tengan un poco de paciencia, pero vamos a tener una conversación muy interesante, porque es muy importante diseñar qué tipo de relación queremos que Estados Unidos tenga con Mesoamérica, qué nivel, cuál es esa relación comercial y política que debemos tener que sea realmente la más beneficiosa para todas las naciones. Hoy estoy con Francisco Gonzalez. Francisco, welcome.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. No se dejen engañar porque se llama Francisco González. Debería de hablar español, pero no. He doesn't speak Spanish.
No bastante.
Even though his name is Francisco González. So, Francisco, first of all, tell us a little bit, who are you? Where you come from?
Well, so Francisco Gonzalez, you nailed it. And my father is from Cuba. That's how I get my name. I always tell people, I get my name from my father, my good looks from my mother. She was also, she's not Hispanic at all. But anyway, I was born in Miami, raised in South Florida, and I come from post.
So you're a true Miamian.
I am, yes. Post college, I worked for 3 different public policy organizations in the United States, and including National Review Institute and the James Madison Institute. And the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. I started to believe that I belonged at an institute, so I had to get out of that area and go more in the entrepreneurial route. But I did fundraising in those 3 organizations. And one of the great things was I was always interfacing with great business people and entrepreneurs, people who might be supporters of the organizations, but also just people I would meet along the way, and really started diving more into these entrepreneurial stories. And that's where I created my own podcast called Agents of Innovation, where I interview a lot of different entrepreneurs. And later I started my own company called Fearless Journeys to help people build the entrepreneur mindset. So I've written a couple books, and And in the last few years, I've also become the executive director of the Economic Club of Miami, coming back home to my roots, I guess you could say. And it's amazing because everyone's coming to Miami now. The whole world. I mean, people.
World.
My entire lifetime, Miami has always had people from everywhere. Like I said, my dad being from Cuba, but in the last, particularly since the pandemic in 2020, that was sort of our tipping point of everybody going, there's something interesting going in Miami. It's free, it's open. And by the way, we have, no state income tax in Florida. And so that helps Miami, but also all the tech people were spending time they were leaving Silicon Valley, spending time in Miami. The finance people who, kind of been migrating to Miami over the years, they just started working more full time from there. So, we've got big financial offices in Miami now. JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Citadel has their global headquarters there. And so this area of Miami, Brickell, as many people know, it's being referred to as Wall Street South. I've even had somebody in Miami say, I don't like that name, Wall Street South. I think we should have our own identity. So that's interesting. But I think it's just showing this, this convolution of forces between the finance world, the tech world, fintech, and then just a lot of Latin American family offices also being established in Miami. So it's been an interesting time to lead this club where, my whole life, every day in South Florida, you can meet.
What's the name of the club?
The Economic Club of Miami. Yeah. So, again, my whole life for the past 4+ decades, I have taken for granted that at any given day in South Florida, you can meet anybody in the world, right? From Asia, from Russia, from Europe, from Latin America. Now more than ever.
Even from Guatemala.
Guatemala, yes, exactly. So,
Francisco, yeah. But I think you said something. Well, I'm not sure if Miami is free. I don't know.
It's expensive.
I don't know if it's free, but it sure respects your freedom,
right?
Which is, I believe, in these days, one of the most, let's say, scarce characteristics that we're looking in different. Well, in the United States, in different states, and in the world. Politicians that really respect your freedom, and that's what I think the Florida politicians, the Florida government did during the pandemic, and that's why they attracted so much people and so much wealth. But we're gonna talk about that in a little while. Maybe what I want to understand, you say you come from institutions, you have your own business, but the thing with working in this type of institutions is the purpose that it gives you. Money not always is the main thing for some people. What's your purpose? How do you see what makes you? What fills your day?
Well, really, it's helping. For me, it's also helping people find their purpose and find their fulfillment.
You're a teacher in Guatemala.
Yes, I teach
UFM, right?
Yeah, I come down here and I as a visiting professor at Francisco Gonzalez, and I've been doing that since 2021. I was actually living here in Guatemala for an entire year in 2021, and I don't know why I left the free and open state of Florida, but I did. But no, part of it was I came down here and I was working remotely to start this business, Fearless Journeys. And what I really had been thinking about for a number of years, I see a lot of people, and I would actually maybe throw myself in this category a little bit at the time, where they have an idea, maybe for a business, and they don't take that leap for a lot of reasons. But the main reason was they have a lot of anxiety, fear, doubts, self-limiting thoughts. And I really, especially in the United States, and we have, like I said, we have people from all over the world come to the U.S. for so many opportunities. The younger generations in the U.S. right now feel like the American dream is slipping away. It's a little bit why I titled my first book.
You would say that in all the U.S.?
I would say most of the U.S., there's a lot of anxiety among young people right now in high school and college and maybe in their mid to late 20s. They don't feel, the reason is they grew up in a world that was very prosperous. These are also people that, they grew up in a world where the internet already existed, the smartphones already existed. They're seeing everything visually through their phones. instantaneously, right? Instantaneous 24/7 news. And they see, oh, my parents had it better than me. They had better opportunities. They're also seeing, the housing market is really expensive right now in the US. So how can, half of my paycheck go to rent or mortgage? Like that's a very, very high amount.
Very high.
Then we've also experienced the 2008 financial crisis. We've experienced COVID. Post-COVID, we experienced inflation, right? So everything's gone up, the higher prices. So there's a lot of reasons for anxiety. Plus, what people like maybe J.D. Vance might have recognized and say his book, Hillbilly Elegy, and even now as vice president, so many jobs going overseas, right? But then now you have technology disrupting the economy through, most apparent AI, right? So there's all these anxieties right now, even in this great land of opportunity, the United States, for the young people. So they have more anxiety. Now, what I like to tell people, though, is yes, but there's a reason why, millions of people a year are trying to enter the United States because they see, an immigrant walks into the United States, they see opportunity everywhere. I kind of like in the entrepreneurial mindset. The entrepreneur mindset is very similar to the immigrant mindset, right? The entrepreneurs see opportunities where other people don't. Immigrants are seeing opportunities where, people who grew up and were raised in the United States maybe are not seeing because they kind of took it for granted.
But I agree with you 100%. And that's why the U.S., I think, is one of the reasons that the U.S. is the U.S., because it was colonized by immigrants that were those people 100 years ago, 200 years ago. For me, anxiety, I'm afraid I agree with you. I would say 50%, because the other 50%, I think anxiety it's a word, it's a new label, like ADD or ADHD, that it's easier to say, I'm suffering from this, that I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Being an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, since I was 22 years old. Being an entrepreneur, it's very difficult. 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and today. Having the stomach to not know if you're going to be able to pay salaries at the end of the month, it's very tough. Trust me on that one. I can tell you. And I say that entrepreneurs, we want to graduate to business, to empresarios.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the word in English, business people. Because an empresario is something is okay. I don't have to. The business is already going, right, to mature. But that has happened historically every time. It's it's just the way it is, and you need stomach for that. And that's why you have very smart people that work for entrepreneurs, and you have very smart people that are entrepreneurs. And sometimes you have not as smart people that are successful entrepreneurs, that they're just smart enough to hire smarter people than them that just don't have the stomach. Because having the stomach is a big issue. It's at the end, I can tell you, this for me is kind of a startup, and it took us 8-9 years to have the cash flow stability, to have certainty that I was going to be able to pay. I had to use my credit cards, my personal credit cards. So what I'm trying to say is, I agree with you, but I also think there's in this world that we're living right now, that everything has a label, everything has a name, because we have to tell kids and boys, just do it.
Yes. Well, it's all about taking action. And what I'm saying is,
have the guts.
This is why I started this community, Fearless Journeys. This is, why I've written the books I've written, and why I'm trying to teach people the entrepreneur mindset, whether it's in my classes or other ways, because the American, we don't have, if you had to say like an ethnic identity, right? We don't have one, right? We're the whole world in one place.
The whole world.
What is our shared DNA? Our shared DNA is the entrepreneurial spirit.
Risk-taking.
Right. We've been doing it ever since, the Mayflower came across, since Columbus took across the ocean, since Lewis and Clark, ventured across the frontier. This has been the American spirit. In fact, what's cool, for people who have maybe gone to Walt Disney World, right? If you go to Epcot Center, right, there's the World Showcase. There's about 16 countries or something around the world, right? You see France, you see Mexico, you see Germany. There's an America one, but it's not called the United States. What's it called? The American Adventure.
Yeah.
Very, very well named, because that's what the United States is. We're still on an adventure of liberty, but the adventure of the entrepreneurial spirit, which really only can exist on this foundation of, liberty and, rule of law, sound financial markets. But this is the thing that I'm trying to instill in everybody I come across is you've got to just believe and have confidence, and it's got to start with your mindset. So before you can actually take that leap to start your own company, be the entrepreneur, which is, like you said, very difficult. Even when you have the good mindset, there's so many things you got to do. But you need to be mentally prepared to do it. But, everybody should try if they have it in them, like an idea and a passion. Because look, at the end of the day, I always ask myself, what's the worst that can happen if this fails? I go back to doing what I was doing before. I go work for somebody else. I have skills. I have experiences. I have a college degree.
And they're going to hire you better if you have the entrepreneurial experience. Trust me on that.
And what I like to say is probably most people are not going to be able to actually start and run a business. It's very difficult. I mean, it might be difficult for your family life. It could be difficult for a lot of reasons, right? But everybody can be more entrepreneurial thinking. So wouldn't you want, I'm sure, Rodrigo, you would love to hire people who are more, who are problem solvers on your team, right? People who have maybe a curious mindset. These are the sorts of characteristics of the entrepreneur, whether they go out and start a business or whether they're entrepreneurially thinking within your company. Like maybe somebody here at Republica has an idea I bet you didn't have a podcast before, right? Somebody probably came up with this idea. Maybe it was you, but it was this is maybe a new way to reach an audience other than
And I was very nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's lots of little things you could do within a company that can grow an audience or grow customers. Or maybe take on
the famous entrepreneurs.
Yes, entrepreneurs.
It's called entrepreneurs.
Yeah, that's great. So everybody can. I think almost everybody can do that.
Well, I can assure you, Francisco, that if that's your purpose, you're in the right side. You're in the right place at the right time. I was having a conversation he was from Norway, a guy from Norway, and he was criticizing the inequality in the world, and mostly the inequality in the United States. And I asked him, how many was the population of Norway? I think it was Norway. And he says 5 million. Okay, 5 million people. The US has 350 million, first of all. So what's the size of the fund? They have a petroleum fund, like a sovereign petroleum fund. I understand it's like 1 trillion of a trillion. I don't know then, because it's from Spanish to English is a different words, but it was $500,000 or $600,000 per person.
Right.
So they are born with $600,000. They're Norwegian. The Norwegians, I think. Norwegians. So I'm you were born with $500,000 in patrimonio. What's the immigration to Norway? 0.
Well, there's some, but it's very small.
To 20 people.
Yeah.
Because even all the immigration to Europe, it doesn't really go all the way. 5 million is what the US gets per year. People with $0 in their pocket. 0. You have, as we were speaking off camera, you have 3 types of migrants in the U.S. You have what I call the volunteer migrants, which are the people that want to migrate to start a business, to do whatever in the U.S., which is, for example, Elon Musk. He migrated to the U.S. So then you have the what I call the unvolunteer but honest, hardworking people. Guatemalans are mainly that. For example, people that they don't have opportunities in their country, and they have to migrate to the U.S. And the amazing thing about the U.S. is that if you're a good tortilla maker with frijoles, you can start a little table somewhere, and in 10 years you can be a millionaire with chains of tortilla, with a taco or burger or whatever you do well, yes, you have to work a lot, of course. And yes, you're still going to have Elon Musk with $300 billion. Okay, so inequality, but inequality is not the problem. Because that guy migrating with zero, he doesn't care if Elon Musk bought a new plane or no. What he wants is to be better. And then you have the third, which is the one that the Democrats really, I think, where they made the biggest mistakes of their lives, which is open the door to the weaponizing of immigration. Tren de Aragua, terrorists. You have a lot of people from a lot of parts of the world that they want to do harm to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So you have those like three groups.
And I would throw in there the probably the movement of drugs into the U.S. too.
Drug dealers using migrants to move drugs,
and we even see human trafficking too.
Human trafficking now, which is horrible. So you have like the three groups, but for the first two, the American dream is the best dream.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best dream in the world. And it's not me saying that or you or no, it's 5 million people per year saying that. Saying, I want to move to the US. They don't even move to England or to Spain or to France. They move to the US. And that's only one, that only has one explanation, which is freedom.
Yes.
Freedom, life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
The three rights.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, and the American dream, it is different for everybody.
That's the name of your book, right?
Yeah. Well, I have two books. The American Dream is a Terrible Thing to Waste was the first one. And the second one is called The Heart of the American Dream. But but the reason that came into being, actually I went back when I was writing, I wrote about so many people that had been on my previous podcast. I was telling a lot of the stories of these different entrepreneurs. And I started noticing, like in the course of these conversations, they were actually referring to their own story as part of the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I think maybe you have to incorporate this word into the book. But also I saw that so many people were anxious about the future of the American dream. Yeah. So there's the second book, the new book, the Heart of the American Dream. Also, both available on Audible now. So if you like to listen to books.
I guess they're on
Amazon. Yeah, they're all found on Amazon and Audible and Apple Books. So anyway, but the idea here with the American Dream, though, is it is different for everybody, but it is really the idea of living the life that you visualize and see, and creating that life. So whatever that is, that's different. Like I said, it's different for everybody. And I would also say it's not limited to the borders of the United States.
That's where I want to go.
Yeah,
that's where I want to go. How can we export the American dream? That's I would say my purpose. We're in Miami now. I was telling you of cameras. The GDP of Florida, $1.7 trillion with 24 million population people. The GDP of Central America, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Dominican Republic, together, $1 trillion.
Wow.
70% less.
And the population is
140 million.
140 million versus about 25 million, something. Yeah, Florida.
And then you have Mexico with 1.7 trillion too, same as Florida, but with 100, I understand they have 125 million population.
So Mexico and Florida are about the same GDP.
With 5 times the population in Mexico. So the nearshoring was the narrative of the last, I would say, 20 years. Friendshoring, nearshoring. It began with nearshoring, and then it ended with friendshoring after the pandemic, which was, we need to be the factory of the United States. And Mexico achieved it. Mexico was very successful. I understand right now, like 3 of the 5 biggest companies in Mexico that in revenues are General Motors of Mexico, Chrysler of Mexico, and Ford of Mexico, something like that. So they did pretty well about it, which is what Trump doesn't really like, the balance. And the rest of the countries of the region that I'm talking about, which is Mesoamerica, We really didn't do it. We were not successful about it, but we were promoting it. We were doing our best. And it was amazing because with one factory, you generate a lot of opportunities, a lot of jobs, well-paid jobs, etc. And you had USAID, the USAID, which thank God disappeared, promoting that, or one of the things that they promoted. But I think we need to really sign that. We need to be very, very courageous, very bold, and we need to really sign, because the real opportunity, from my point of view, is if Florida is $1.7 trillion in GDP and Mexico is 1.7, if we manage to get the rest of these countries to go up to 1.7 trillion, then it's going to be a good business for Floridian business leaders to come to make business here. Not because, oh, I want to help stop immigration. No. I want to make money. I'm going to put my restaurant, I'm going to put my chain I'm going to put my chain of restaurant or my, not even my factory, but my stores in that region, because it's good business. That's what we need to do. We need to generate, let's say, the cultivo. We need to generate the conditions for that to happen. And what I've seen, and here comes my question. I don't know. I want you as a Miamian, as a Floridian, as American, to tell me what's your point of view here. Is that where that has happened in the world is, of course, the United States 100 years ago, 120 years ago, Europe after the World War II, Japan after World War II, and South Korea. And in those 4 countries, but mainly the first 3 countries, the U.S. came in. It was called Plan Marshall Plan in Europe and Japan. I understand in Japan was the same name, or no, I'm not sure. And in the U.S. it was just a policy to build infrastructure, roads, ports, airports. If the U.S. could come here and really invest money in private-public alliances to build ports, airports, roads, railroads, tunnels, what you did in Europe, what you did in Japan, that's the only thing that has really worked. And then business would come after that, because you would have clients in these countries. How do you see that?
Yeah, no, I think I mostly agree with you there. Again, I've spent a lot of time in Guatemala, and even
do you see the ecom members coming here to invest, to make money, if there's good opportunities?
Yeah. So what needs to improve in Guatemala? A few things.
Central America.
One, you got to do better at PR, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, in tourism, it seems like Costa Rica for many decades has done great at PR. You also,
well, you've been a big tourist here in Guatemala.
I mean, I've been all over, right? And I bring groups here through my Fearless Journeys community, and I've brought more than 70 people here through one of my trips, and only 2 people had ever been in Guatemala, and they spent very little time before my trip. My trip's like a week long. We go to like 3 or 4 places around the country. We meet with actually local entrepreneurs in the country, so they get a sense of, business and entrepreneurship. And also, you get to learn more about the local culture when you meet different local entrepreneurs, go to great restaurants, all the stuff. Every single person, I mean, only a couple days into the trip, it only takes a couple days. They all just have this light bulb go off, like, this is an amazing place.
It's an awe.
This is different than what I expected. And when I ask people who have never been to Guatemala before, what do you think of Guatemala? Sometimes they don't even know where it is on the map exactly, right? Then their next thing is, isn't it a dangerous country, right? Isn't it just like a lot of poor people there? And they have that because
we have the same reputation as Haiti.
Yeah, and the reason is,
we shared that.
I think there's a few reasons. One, you have, when is Guatemala in the news? Like, first of all, people are very focused on where they live, right? They're very focused on their family and taking their kids to school. They don't have time to look at everywhere in the world,
Explore,
right?
Yeah.
And it's not, Guatemala's a smaller country, so when it comes into the public spotlight, it's usually, things that come into this public spotlight that don't happen it's usually something negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was a Guatemalan migrant on the subway in New York killed somebody. Oh, that
Guatemala,
right? Guatemala, right? So you associate Guatemala, some murderer, right? It's also, you see thousands of people, at least in the previous 4 years, coming across the border, mostly from Guatemala. If you see migrants leaving a country, your automatic thing is that country must not be doing good. I spent a lot of time in Guatemala, and we're here in Guatemala City. It's a very prosperous city. It's the largest capital in Central America.
By far.
Right around where we're at here in Zone 10, there are construction going up ever since I got here 4 years ago. And there's buildings that are here that weren't here a few years ago when I was living here. And they're just constantly building here. So you could see the urban center really growing. You have beautiful places in this country like Antigua and Lake Atitlan. You have historic sites like Tikal. I mean, it's an amazing place to be. A lot of culture, a lot of history, a lot of natural beauty. So I think that, honestly, I give a little bit of criticism to our own government in the U.S. because, and I just experienced this firsthand, a lot of times when people are leaving the U.S., especially people that don't travel that much internationally, one of the first places they go is the State Department's website, right? That's where they get their passports and see all the updates. And when I was living here in 2021, I had several friends that wanted to visit me and, go hang out in Guatemala. And they called me and said, Francisco, not sure whether to come because the State Department's website lists Guatemala as a level 4. And I was like, I didn't even know what that meant. What's a level? So finally I went and investigated this. And yeah, if you go probably to this day, even in a new state,
there's a travel warning.
There's travel warnings. Even just a couple of weeks ago when I was coming here, on the front page of the State Department, earthquake warning. I was like, that would be like giving a hurricane warning to go visit Florida, right?
No, not even that. No, because hurricanes, you can see them coming.
Right.
Earthquakes, impossible.
So it's
to go into California.
I sent the link to
California has a lot more earthquakes than Guatemala.
Yeah, I sent a link to another friend of mine in Guatemala who always hears me talk about this. And I said, it's almost like the State Department is trying with every ounce of incentive to keep people from coming here. It's like to make this earthquake excuse. Like it was kind of crazy. I was like, what? So anyway, I hope we have friends in the State Department now. I hope that they will see this and change the perspective of how to, because this adds to the negativity. Now, I want to give some credit to National Geographic. They just did an amazing cover story, 36-page article, and I read this and I was like, did anybody at the State Department read this? Because this in fact, even in the article, they talk about how things are pretty safe in Guatemala. Yeah. And I thought, have you ever felt unsafe here? I've never felt unsafe. I walk around everywhere. Even Guatemalans feel less safe than me.
No, I walk too.
Right? I walk everywhere.
I walk everywhere.
And you know what? Anyway, I always tell people when I mention this to people, I said, it'd be interesting if the State Department used its own level of scrutiny on some American cities.
Detroit.
Like Detroit, DC. Yeah, Chicago, Philadelphia. You wouldn't go to most of these cities if the State Department was determining.
We have less killings in Guatemala than Costa Rica per 100,000. Well, this government is trying to
now. I do think
change that for the worse.
I do think that there's a lot of people who are living in the past, including in Guatemala. But I think there was a war here between the 60s and the 90s. There was a lot more violence, maybe in the early 2000s, gang violence. You look at those things. But I think post 2010, things have been really great.
And the war was not. I knew the war. I felt the war because we had a coffee plantation. We still have a coffee plantation where the war was going on. But I would say that's similar to Israel. It's different to be in the Gaza Strip or in the where they're really, well, right now Gaza is another thing, but Israel is another thing. But being in Tel Aviv, so and this is what happens here. Here, the city and these touristic areas that you say are usually very safe. But my question, going back to my question, Francisco, how do you see, or do you see members of ECOM, Miami business leaders, Miami entrepreneurs interested in investing in Mesoamerica, in this greater Caribbean area called Central America, Colombia, well, Venezuela, we know that, so let's skip Nicaragua and Venezuela, but Central America, Colombia, Dominican Republic, what would you say they need to say, hey, let's open an office there instead of
They need it.
instead
They need
of doing it
information.
in Atlanta, for example?
Yeah, they need information, which is why I started with the PR element, right? There's got to be a little bit better PR going out and showing people. You and I were talking about the assets that some of the banks here in Guatemala, local Guatemalan banks, have major assets, right? And I think if people knew that, they might invest. Also, if I'm an investor,
And none of the banks went bankrupt in the 2008. None.
yeah,
Our
none.
banking system survived the crisis, the housing crisis, amazingly well.
The other thing that people might need to understand is Guatemala has maybe the most sound currency in Latin America.
By far.
It has.
It's stronger than the dollar.
It's stronger than. In fact, I've heard people here say that they pretty much track with the Federal Reserve in the U.S. and they wish they didn't have to because
20 years ago the exchange rate was 8 quetzales and 30 cents per dollar. Today is 7 quetzales and 65 cents.
Yeah, very sound. I mean, I've been coming here for 6 years and it hasn't changed. It's been through the pandemic and everything. And so it's really that shows me financial stability in the financial institutions.
Correct.
Which is number one if you're like an investor. One of the biggest challenges in most of Latin America, and really, to be quite honest with you, outside of the United States, we just take so many things for granted in terms of our rule of law, our separation
That's
of powers, all these sorts of things. So some people may see some insecurity in the stability of governance and things like that.
I agree there. Definitely agree. That's definitely an issue. But right now, for example, we have an event on August 27. I don't know if this show is going to be before that or published before that or after that. That's up to my producer. But we are making an alliance. We're promoting an alliance, a public-private alliance between the United States government, the Guatemalan government, and Guatemalan private sector, and whoever, I guess, private sector want to come, to build the Canal Seco, to build the hub, to make Guatemala the hub. We have access to both oceans, Atlantic and Pacific, and you could connect both oceans by land in 4 to 5 hours if we had a good road or a good railroad, or both. So right now, the Guatemalan government just signed a contract with the Army Corps of Engineers of the United States Army of about, I understand it's about $65 or $70 million to fix what needs to be fixed in the port that is located in the Pacific. And I was very happy about it. I was speaking with some American people from government, and I was telling them, this is the way. So the ports here are going to be owned either by the Chinese, the mafia, or the Americans. So I'd rather have the Americans, by far. First. Second, we have the money. Guatemala right now has a lot of money in the bank as a country. So we have to hire you. And why do we have to hire you? Because instead of doing, a donation, a grant, it's good to Guatemala that Guatemalan is hiring and paying for the services. Because first of all, you're going to have the Army Corps of Engineers with a commitment to honrar to that contract, to how do you say it? To cumplir el contrato, which Americans are famous for that. Americans usually, one of the great things of the Americans is that you make a contract that's
You fulfill it.
you fulfill it.
Yeah.
So they're going to fulfill it. And I don't know now. I don't know now. And I don't think there's still a politician in Guatemala right now, or a judge, or a business leader that would break a contract with the United States. They would do it with private companies, but with the U.S. government, I don't know if that politician exists right now. So I think what I'm trying to say here is, if that happens, well, it's already happening, which I think is awesome. And I have to recognize that's a lot of work from the U.S. ambassador here in Guatemala. That's a good thing. If that happens, and that start to happen in the rest of the countries that I'm talking about, then that rule of law, that is also going to be a consequence. Because here, for example, when you have American Airlines, they've had some trouble, but they treat them very different than Guatemalan or other countries. And different, when I say different is they respect them more because you have the U.S. government behind. So that's, I think it's part of the solution. You know what I mean? To generate this virtuous cycle instead of the vicious cycle that we have right now.
Yeah.
And that brings me to the next part, let's say, a phase of the conversation. As I was telling you, the last, let's say, 20 years, nearshoring was the narrative, the word, awesome. We need to change that by far, definitely. I'm reading, I haven't finished the book of J.D. Vance, The Hillbilly Elegy, I understand it's called. And he wrote that book 9 years ago. He wasn't even a senator or a congressman. I don't know if he was already running or not. I think not. And what he says is that the globalization, which is they're changing the world economic order.
Mm-hmm.
They're changing the theory of the pencil. They are challenging the theory of the pencil. And what he says is, a country like Panama, for example, can live by exporting or by a service economy. A country of 350 million people cannot. You need to be industrialized, which was the let's say the golden era of the United States was because of your industries. But that changed in globalization. You still have Google, you still have Apple, but you have, let's say, the service part of those companies in the United States, or the marketing parts, and then you have the factories in China or other countries. And what he says is, the Middle America people are the ones that are paying the Rust Belt, the Appalachian, they are the ones paying the consequences of that. Because you have very smart, very well-educated people working for Google, for Apple. I would say, I'm not sure, but I would say a big percentage are Americans, but you have a lot of Asians, a lot of Indians. You have a lot of people from all over the world working in those companies. And then you have the migrants like Guatemalans, Hondurans, the ones that go to the U.S. to work, well, in the agricultural, in the hospitality business, etc. So doing, let's say, the lower work.
Right.
But this Middle America, they lost opportunities. So what I'm seeing there is that this is not politics. This is something that really drives J.D. Vance in his DNA. This is his heart. And when you mix heart and power, you don't want to be in front of that. So that's going to change. How can we take, instead of suffering the consequences, how can we take advantage of that? Being so close to what can be by far the biggest and strongest. Well, right now, there's the biggest and strongest country in the world. But that's if this is successful, which I think is going to be, is going to put the U.S. It's going to be a a big step above of the rest of the world. And we are very close, 2 hours away,
Yeah, very close.
1,000 kilometers away. How can we take advantage of it?
Well, look, I think there's like you mentioned it, Trump and Vance and this administration, very focused on remaking that economic order because they've just seen, I think for the most part, they've just seen the unfair trade policies, but also the exporting, like you said, the exporting of all these industrial type
But Trump
jobs.
is seeing the economic part of it.
Right,
J.D. Vance is seeing the human part.
right. Yeah, which you can tie them together, right?
Definitely. They are doing that.
So I agree. So I think maybe to your point, Trump's seeing sort of the macro part of it, and JD Vance is seeing the personal, right down to his family,
Exactly.
and also how it
His
affected
mother.
his mother, drug abuse, all these sorts of things, right? So, but I think what you got a couple things in the Trump administration. One, they're very focused on this reshaping the economic order, but also the big piece that Trump ran on, probably the number one thing was getting the border secure
Mhm.
and kind of stopping the illegal immigration, right? But they've also leaned into, if you look at some of Trump's rhetoric and speeches, they still want the Elon Musk of the world, right? They still want the high skilled immigrant that can come here who is already being educated sometimes in the United
But they
States.
also want the low skill, the Guatemalans. But he's already talking about it, that he knows that he needs them.
Yeah, but there's a challenge here because I think what JD Vance is talking about is that low skilled immigrant is
taking
competition with
Yes.
maybe the person that lives in Kentucky
Yes.
or Middle America, right? And so you see that now. There's a lot of dynamics at play here within the U.S. But let's go to Guatemala. I think if and this is something that maybe the case could be made, especially now that we have a Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. I've thought this for many years, and you just being here and talking to people, if that second type of immigrant you identified, what I would call the economic immigrant, the economic migrant, that only exists because there's no opportunities here. These are the most entrepreneurial type of people. I mean, they're the ones that are willing to actually take the risk. I mean, some of them have gone on a 1,000-mile journey by leg, and they've dealt with all sorts of bad people along the way.
In a tough country.
Right, in tough countries from Guatemala through Mexico, dealing with cartels, everything, right? So you have all of that. They make it. Talk about a fearless journey, right? And
that's a fearless journey.
Yeah, they make it. Maybe they have family connections. Maybe they don't. A lot of them send money back here to Guatemala. I think something like
Some die in the process.
20-25% of the GDP of Guatemala is remittances coming from family in the
it's
U.S.
not GDP, but it's part of the economy.
Yeah. But look, if you improve the economic situation here in Guatemala, you reduce the big part of the immigration problem, especially the illegal immigration. So if I'm kind of like looking at this from the JD Vance perspective, and I'm going, maybe it might be good to invest in some infrastructure in Guatemala, because the more I've been around here too. By the way, like one of the great things I tell people in the United States is about traveling, is when you travel, it really helps you understand your own home better, because you take away, if you grow up in the United States, you take so much for granted. Right? Like how good it is in the United States. There's lots of things we complain about all the time, and we always want to improve. But when you go out, one of the things that I've noticed, even like in Guatemala, is I'm like, man, how transportation infrastructure is so important, because this is a very small geographic country, but the time things can take to get from one side of the country to the other. And also, you have mountains, and you have things that are very difficult. But, I was in Medellin, Colombia a couple years ago for the first time. And I don't know if you've been there, but you leave the airport and you go right through a mountain. Anyway, the only reason I asked the question was we were in this tunnel for like 10 minutes or something, right?
Yeah, it's very long.
And maybe longer, but it was about
new. That was built by Ivan Duque.
Yeah. So about, we're 10 minutes in, and I asked the Uber driver, how long is this tunnel? And he explained to me it was fairly new in the last 10 years or something. And but he said, before this tunnel, it would take about an hour and a half to get to the city because we had to go around the mountain. Now it takes 20 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And I literally texted a friend of mine in Guatemala who And I said,
we need those.
my gosh, this is what Guatemala needs. Imagine a tunnel from the airport to Antigua, like through a mountain or something, or different parts, and you could, one that would move tourists faster. It would take a lot of congestion off the roads, but you would move goods, like, because the thing is, commerce needs roads.
And the great thing about that is that, let's say, in ports, in airports, even in roads, you can make money and take that money to the U.S. It would be fine by us. So you can profit if your politicians and your business people, business leaders in the U.S. want to do that in our countries, mainly in Guatemala. You can make money out of it and take that money, which is also what Trump and J.D. Vance want, to the U.S.
Right.
But you will generate, let's go back to the touristic example. How many Marriotts, how many Ritz-Carltons, how many Four Seasons could we have here?
Oh, yeah. It'd be incredible. I mean, maybe a Trump hotel, maybe a Trump plaza
a Trump
or something.
golf club.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So I think there's a lot. I mean, like you said, and we're right on the, Guatemala here is right on the doorstep of the United States. So. And
2 hours from Miami.
By flight.
4 hours and a half from New York.
Yeah.
It's
very, very easy to get in and out. So yeah, a lot of infrastructure. You could even have a new airport here. You could have, like you said, the investments in the ports and the roads. Obviously, there's buildings going up. If I'm a real estate investor, I'll tell you what, I'd be looking at Guatemala City. And I know, I know people here in real estate in Guatemala that are doing very well.
That are investing in Miami.
They're investing in Miami, but they're even putting up buildings here in Guatemala. And I have a good friend that lives in the Jacksonville area, and he's recently gotten into real estate investment in some smaller cities in northern Florida that are now bubbling up. And I said to him, "You're smart," because I said the Miami market's taken.
Yes,
the only way to be a real estate investor in the Miami market is you already have to have money. Especially if you want to build a building.
You need to have like $1 billion to buy the land.
So if you're up in a smaller area, like I have some family that live not too far from this area called Palatka. It's you wouldn't even know where it is, kind of between Gainesville and St. Augustine. So my friend's looking at, he's been investing in some communities there, and I said, very smart. But I would say the same thing. If you're looking at Guatemala, you could be the first. You could be among the first. This is an untapped market, whereas like Mexico. People are already paying attention to Mexico. Right? People have been investing in Mexico a long time. Mexico is doing great. By the way, the great success of Mexico adds to the argument I made earlier. 20 to 30 years ago, one of the biggest challenges at the U.S. border was Mexican immigrants. You see almost no Mexican immigrants anymore.
Well,
very few.
You have negative immigration. You have negative immigration.
Now more Americans live in Mexico.
No, more Mexicans coming back.
Yeah,
Mexicans are coming back.
But actually, there was a headline a couple years ago. It was in a Mexican newspaper or something, and it was like Mexicans upset of how many Americans are in Mexico City now, and how many. people...
that's 2 months ago.
Yeah, and
gentrification, and they made
And I said, well, that's kind of funny. It's almost like it's reversed, but that's a sign of prosperity for Mexico. It's now one of the largest economies in the world. It's doing well. So Mexico's an example. And look how huge that country is to be able to do that. Guatemala is so much smaller. And I think that means you could really have a big uplift easier in a sense.
For that, if you ask me as a Guatemalan, why hasn't that happened? Why do we have so bad PR? I'm 98% sure it's because of our politicians. We've allowed, because we have allowed them to have the worst politicians in the world in the last 25 years. So, and that takes me to Florida politics. For me, the Florida government, and when I say Florida government, I mean like all the main politicians in Florida, from the governor, the senators, the congressmen and congresswomen. And I just met Rob González, which is Guatemalan, by the way, which is a commissioner in I think the 13th district of Miami-Dade, which is amazing, by the way. The Florida politics are the best politicians of Latin America. Yes. And the interesting thing about it is that they have been Republican in the last, I would say, 15, 20 years constantly. And I think that's going to keep being Republican in the next. And not only Republican, but strong Republican. Very well determined because of the freedom. Floridians and Florida politicians have seen the Reddits, the benefits of respecting freedom, pursuit of happiness, and life. So I think they're going to keep doing that. So we can expect, I think, Florida politicians and Florida governments to be Republicans in the next 20 years. And I want to connect those politicians, those governments, with the Central American, the Caribbean governments. I divide, for you to know, I divide Latin America in two. Latin America, when you Americans say Latin Americans, it's very different. Argentinian, Uruguayan, a Paraguayan guy, a Peruvian guy, a Chilean guy, than the Guatemalans, Salvadorian, Dominican Republic. It's like two regions. Like the guys in the South America, they skip us when they speak to the U.S., which is fine.
Right.
Let's say Colombia is the country that has both relationships. Colombia and Ecuador are the countries that I would say have both relationships. Mexico is mainly U.S., a little bit, they look a little bit downwards because it's very easy for them, but it's mainly U.S. Colombians are the ones like watching more and interacting more with this Caribbean area of the world, of America. So if we could connect, and this is my, and you don't have to answer here, but we can discuss it. If we could connect politicians, good politicians, Republican politicians, and when I say Republicans, I mean people that defend life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness, and they like rule of law and separation of powers. If we could connect those politicians, business leaders of mainly Miami, Florida, with whatever we find in our region of good politicians, which are going to be very tough to find, and Colombia is suffering right now that consequence, and business leaders in the area, I really do believe that we can create a big community called, let's say, Ruta de las Américas, Ruta del Caribe, the Gulf of America.
Yeah.
But it's not even the Gulf, it's this whole sea, the Caribbean Sea. It's like the Mediterranean part of America. We can go by boat to Miami. Come on. We can go by, but not a yacht. You can go by boat you can go with a tire from Cuba to Miami. But that's how close we are. We are 1,000 miles away between Guatemala and Miami. 2 hours. I think Colombia would be the longest flight, and it's 3 hours and 20 minutes. So we're very, very close. There's a lot of direct flights, but we can do a lot more, and that would be a very strong economy. And it will be awesome for the ECOM members. I think it will be very good business for the ECOM members. And it will be an awesome business for the Guatemalan, Central American, Salvadorian, Honduran, Costa Rican, Panamanian. I wouldn't do business in Nicaragua, Colombian, Dominican Republic, even Puerto Rico. We could include in this ecosystem. What do you say?
Yeah, no, it's great. It's funny for.
Am I a dreamer?
Very well. You got to dream first, right? Before you take action. But I think a few years ago, a lot of people in Florida, because Florida, we call ourselves now the free state of Florida. Even the governor put up signs when you enter Florida that says "Welcome to the free state of Florida," because we got this reputation, and where money goes, where money's treated well, and when
exactly,
and you just follow the money, and it's gravitating towards where it's free and where it's treated well. But a few years ago, we were telling people, gosh, there's so many people moving to Florida. Maybe we need to, help other states in the country be a little more like Florida. So somebody came up with the slogan, "Make America Florida." Maybe we could add a little, maybe make Latin America Florida, or make,
let's make the greater Caribbean Florida.
But everybody comes to Miami. Everybody comes to Florida. I mean, we've got, it's funny when you people fly to Europe from here. They always connect through Miami for the most part, Panama, Miami. But so we're like a transit point for people, but we're also an entry point into the U.S. And also Miami is a launching point. I think can be a launching point from the U.S. into Central America, South America. I mean, it's a launching point for me. I love to travel in these regions all the time, and it's fun. And actually, as more people have migrated from other U.S. states to Florida, I see, like I know people that lived in California and New York that maybe they would vacation in Asia, or they would vacation in Hawaii, or they would vacation in Europe. And now they're coming to Miami. You walk around the airport, you go, look at all these Latin American names on the board. Very easy now to get a flight to Peru or Guatemala or wherever you want to go down in South. And by the way, this is for people who like adventure. This is a fun region.
It's a fun region.
Nature is just blossoming here. That's why the other thing about Guatemala, I mean, it's such a prosperous country from an agricultural perspective too. I mean, obviously the best coffee in the world, but as someone here told me once, in Guatemala you just throw a seed on the ground and things grow, right? There's a lot of places in the world that's not the case.
And our weather is beautiful.
It's perfect. I mean, that's why I'm here for a month in the summer for the Florida summer. It's so hot and humid. You come here, it's the eternal spring.
I was talking with a friend that I have in Miami, and he has a second home in Bahamas, and he says to me, I changed, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Going to. And I was saying, you should go to Lake Atitlan.
Yeah.
So if you like a little bit of cold weather, but tropical, you want to be at, let's say, at 80 Fahrenheit at 3 p.m., but you want to be at 65 Fahrenheit at 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Atitlan is the place.
It's perfect. I mean, even Guatemala City's been like that a lot.
Yeah, but if you want to have a second home,
right,
and you would be 4 hours away from it.
Yeah, it's great. So look, there's I agree with you. I think people could lean into investing in this region and to have that connection. So back to could the politicians of Florida have something to teach the politicians? Is this what you're hoping for?
That's one of the things.
Yeah,
that's what I truly believe is that if we mix them and we start, hopefully, our politicians they're going to look more alike the Florida politicians. So we have to keep the Florida politicians as they are, or improve them, but not let them be more. What happened with the Democratic Party, for example, is that they look alike more as the Latin American governments. So we need the few good Latin American politicians to look alike more the Republicans. And the Florida Republicans are amazing.
Yeah, well, I think Republica could do a great job in terms of just profiling them, highlighting. I noticed a story the other day. You had some kind of profile of Rick Scott and something he had to say, and I think it was about maybe the Colombian president, or the candidate who just was killed. So I think, yes, I think being able to showcase these people as model leaders that then people in Guatemala could look at it and go, gosh, I would like to have somebody like Ron DeSantis. By the way, it's so funny because I spent 2021 here and I come back here a lot. And so many people, when I tell them I'm from Florida, Ron DeSantis, I love that Ron DeSantis, right? And I wish we had a governor or a leader like that here. And, there were so many reasons. But, politics is very difficult anywhere. And I think it's, maybe more challenging here. Everything is about incentives, right? Like, why would somebody go into you really, going back to the heart, right? You really have to have a heart for it if you want to do something good, right? Mm-hmm. Or a lot of politicians, politics also attracts the corrupt, the narcissistic, the powerful, and people make money. So, even the U.S., I mean, right? You see all these members of Congress who go in and their net worth somehow goes substantially higher on this salary that's not that much.
They make more money than Warren Buffett.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, Nancy Pelosi's got the best stock picks. You got to scratch your head and go, what's going on here? So even in the U.S., corruption.
Oh, I agree.
Corruption is part of the human heart, right? It's the line as we've read. I think it was Solzhenitsyn who said the line between good and evil runs through every human heart. So what's different about the U.S. system is the U.S. system, our founding fathers, they understood this so well. They understood the fallen nature of man. And so what can we do is what they asked. What can we do? They looked at all the systems of government in the history of the world, and they decided it was every human being gravitates towards more power, right? So what can we do? Let's separate powers against themselves.
Checks and balances.
So we have checks and balances. So that's where you get the three branches of government, executive, judicial, legislative, but also it's why they designed a system of federal and state. And then within the state, you have local governments, right? And so which
is what I'm worried about El Salvador.
Yeah, right. That's the challenge there with El Salvador, right? Because within the system, like I said, you're going to have corruption is part of the human experience. So what can you do to mitigate it, right? You gotta have all these checks and balances. So if you lose the check and balance, then you're going to lose something.
The citizen, when that happens, the citizen is the one that loses their liberty.
And not only that, the citizen becomes distrustful. And so what does the citizen do? The citizen engages in bad activities, in illegal activities. They go underground. They go to the black market. I mean, look at Cuba. I mean, Cuba is a mess.
No, look at Argentina.
Yeah.
You went to Buenos Aires and you had to buy dollars.
Yeah.
Like here in Guatemala, you did it in the 80s, like underground in these very shady places called the Blue.
The blue dollar. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Francisco, thank you very much. Thank you for loving our region that much. Thank you for promoting this entrepreneurial and freedom principles, which I think they're very good for humanity. I always said that it was important that Trump won the election for the United States, but it was more important for Trump to win the election for the world.
Yeah.
Because we needed a guy that was that crazy and that bold to really, let's say, retroceder, to push back everything that the Democrats and the globalists were achieving, were advancing. We needed somebody like him, like Elon Musk, that really said, "Hey, two genders, sorry." And it sounds, wow, how courageous. Come on. So, but I think you're doing your part in the private sector, in this fearless journey, and with your book. And we need to promote that, because at the end, we have enjoyed what our ancestors did to give us this region, this part of the world. We live in a great part of the world where freedom's still protected in most places, where individual liberty and individual rights are well protected, and where you can really dream and wake up and work for your dream.
Mm-hmm.
You can dream and not wake up, which happens, but we're still mostly we still live in a region that you can dream, wake up, and work for your dream. And we need to protect that. And we need to promote and protect that.
And, we talked about a lot here on the American dream. I think there should be the Guatemalan dream.
Yes.
And
we need to make Guatemala not great again, Guatemala first.
Yeah. And the thing, but it comes with the belief and the confidence first. Sometimes I feel like I sense from so many people in this country, they don't have the belief that they can be great, that this country can be great. Maybe there's things in their life or in the past history that they just, even everything from just the
there's
safety
a lot of
right? So I
think
people need to rework their mindset about what this country is and can be. And I think that would, and then also that will also add to the confidence of going out into the world and selling it, and being bold enough to say, hey, like, why don't you come here? Why don't you invest here? Or what can we, look, I mean, these are some of the most, Guatemalans are some of the most hardworking people on the planet. And I love Argentina. And I love all my friends in Argentina. And I love to go there too. But I always tell people they're kind of lazy down there, okay? No offense.
Definitely.
But I mean, when you compare Guatemalans, you give Guatemalans 16 hours of work a day, they will do it.
Let me tell you something. when the election, when I went to the inauguration, not to the main event, but to the galas, some of the galas in January. So I was with a friend. She's expert in security. She's very close to the DOD and to all this. And she says to me, prepare. And I was like, why? Because we have 450,000 migrants already located that we're going to kick out of the country in the first 3 months. I'm like, wow, 450,000. Yes. And how did you identify them? Well, it's people that had felonies. I'm like, okay, then I'm not worried. What do you mean? I'm pretty sure of those 430,000, no more than 20,000 are Guatemalans. If there's 20,000, I can assure you, we are in August. Guatemala deportees are less than last year. And that's because I understand that the administration has focused on people that have on delincuentes. So Guatemalans are not there.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
And
also
there's some, but we're not the majority. So so I agree with you. Guatemalans are hard workers, are honest.
And some of the most hospitable people too. Like, people have taken me into their families and their homes, and a constant phrase I hear, and even friends of mine heard when they came to Guatemala for the first time. When I visit, sometimes you say, oh, mi casa es su casa. Okay, here in Guatemala, no, mi casa es nuestra casa, right? So it's your house. It's
they make you feel at home.
Yeah. So it's not just it's
not just a slogan.
not just so. Yeah, it's not just that this is that you're welcome in my house. This is your house too. Is what they
But we have to be more proud. I was speaking with a policymaker, and he says to me, "Well, Rodrigo, you have to understand that America first is the new order." And I'm like, I understand and I respect it, but for me, it's also Guatemala first.
Right.
So that's what we have, and we have to do El Salvador first, and Honduras first. Well, what people I think respect about Bukele is that he has done El Salvador first, and that's very important. It doesn't matter if we're small, big, medium. Every country has to do their country first, and then let's have a relationship as partners.
Right.
A good relationship, a business relationship, a policy relationship as partners with respect, as equals, not as the guy that I'm giving money every year or every month to pay even for the desks. Well, Francisco, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rodrigo.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for being here, not for having us, but for being here. Thank you for what you're doing, and I hope you bring more people on your trip here, and we'll see each other we'll keep seeing each other in Miami, and good luck also. I think what you're doing with Ecom is awesome, and please keep doing it.
I will. Thank you, and thanks for having me here. And I love reading the work of Republica. It also helps me work on my Spanish a little bit. So thank you so much for the work you're doing here.
Awesome, Francisco. Thank you very much. Bueno, here we were with Francisco Gonzalez, the executive director of the Economic Club of Miami, writer of The Heart of the American Dream, this book here that you can find in Amazon, and also a good friend of the ideas of the Republican ideas, not only the Republican Party, but the Republican ideas of life, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness. Pues muchas gracias a todos por habernos acompañado en este episodio de Líderes, y los esperamos en el próximo episodio, todos los jueves. Muchas gracias.